So guys, it's that time again. Time for another subscriber suggested video, and unfortunately this one's been delayed just like the last one. If you're in my community notes and you've seen several of my videos, you already know why. I apologize for that, trying to get back on track here, get organized again. I thank you for all the support, for those of you that showed the support, and thank you for all y'all that turned in suggestions. This week it was actually very little to go off of. Only 3 people turned in suggestions, being Jack Latch, Bronx Beast Squad, and Football Talk. And I went with Jack Latch's what to expect from the New York Giants in 2020 because out of the 3, I think it was 4 suggestions I got. I think Football Talk might have turned in 2 suggestions. This was the one that I liked the most. No disrespect to the other ones, but Jack Latch's one definitely intrigued me the most. I mean, we're about a month away from the season and whatnot, so this is actually a nice little time to get that done. Talk about my personal expectations from the New York Giants in 2020 and whatnot. So I was like, let me go ahead with it. I mean, just want to say for the next subscriber selected or subscriber suggested vid, please guys do turn in suggestions, because it's not like I had a lot to choose from. That being said, let's get into it. So I'm not even really sure how I'm gonna edit this, because I'm just I made a list, right? I mean, it's expectations, and of course I do have some type of backing for each of my expectations that I have in the vid, but I'm not sure how I'm gonna edit it. It's not kind of like my other subscriber suggested vids, where the theme of it kind of falls in with my my heavy editing style when it comes to this, but we'll see how it goes. But the first one I have is improvement on the field. I fully expect the Giants in 2020 to show improvement from what they were in 2019, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in wins, which is why I specifically said improvement on the field. I expect them to know the one thing that they seemingly did not last year, and is the one thing that Joe Judge, Jason Garrett, Thomas McGahee, Patrick Graham, and seemingly all the coaches on the Giants' new coaching staff have been drilling into their players in the short offseason that we have. That is teaching the schemes, identifying and communicating every single part of the schemes, whether it's the offensive scheme, the defensive scheme, or even the special team scheme. The one thing I expect them to get down is knowing the very basics and the fundamentals of what they're supposed to do. And the Giants in 2019 100% did not have that down. There were many games you could look at where you could see the Giants just did not know what they were doing on the field, especially on the defensive side of things. Now, the offense, this is not an excuse to the offense or anything, but the offense wasn't much better. Although they did put up quite a few points, that might have been a little bit more of Daniel Jones' doing, in games like against the Lions and whatnot, where he threw 4 or 5 touchdowns against the Redskins. But every other game like that, on both sides of the ball, you can see no adjustments were being made. There's no type of change in the game plan after certain points in the game where you would expect changes in the game plan to be made. The defense seemingly came out and did the same thing every week and looked confused every week, especially in the secondary. The key example of that being DeAndre Baker of last year, and him, of course, the infamous falling asleep in during meetings and stuff like that, which obviously led to him being confused. He said he didn't even have the playbook down, very late in the season and whatnot. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't the only person that was confused by the playbook, whether it was a lack of teaching or just general confusion amongst everybody in the defensive back room. But the defense and the offense, really the only part of the team that seemed to be clicking somewhat with special teams, even though Aldrick Rosas was having a down year because of bad snapping from Zach Diassi. But all in all, the Giants did not have the one thing that they're drilling into themselves right now. They did not have the identification and communication of schemes down. And off of every press conference that we've seen so far from training camp, which once again is very short, so that they could only get so much done, the thing they're focusing on the most, more than anything, is making sure these players learn what they need to learn. Because once again, Judge has a whole staff of players, so we hope to see that come through, and I definitely hope to see them, and I expect to see them improve on the field. Once again, it might not lead directly to wins. If it does, of course, I'll be happy. But the Giants next year, they may be a terrible team, they may be a great team, but one thing I expect them to be, masters at is knowing what they're supposed to do, knowing what they're supposed to be, and knowing how to carry out the situations, even if they may not have the talent or execution down to do it. Just executing the scheme and looking like you actually know football out there, I expect that from them. Just improvement on the field. Now, coming in next as my second expectation for the team does kind of deal with wins. Now, this is something that's gotten exponentially harder to do, and it was already something that's really difficult to do because the NFL is a parity and there's many variables going into every year. Honestly, there's no such thing as, predicting how many wins a team can get. It's very near impossible. But it got even worse. The chances of me doing that got even worse after the pandemic hit and it messed up the offseason, and now they only got like a month to prepare. I initially predicted, and the video is up in my season prediction video in terms of how many wins the Giants are going to have. I said 7 and 9. At the time, I firmly believe it. As of right now, my belief is kind of being shaken, but I still think it's a possibility. I think the Giants are anywhere from a 4 to 8 win team. I can't see us possibly getting a winning season this year. I mean, it would be great if we do, but there's just way too much stacked against us. You talked about the extremely tough schedule that we have. I think on NFL.com or some other website, it ranks us as like the second toughest schedule in the league. We're just not catching any breaks here, going up against the AFC North and the NFC West, possibly the strongest and most scary two combination of conferences to go up against, in addition to the NFC East that we face every year. The Giants are not going to catch any breaks. Brand new coaching staff, one of the youngest teams in the entire league that are currently still full of potential but have not been tapped into yet. They could very well go out there and stink up the joint, and maybe next year they go out there and do something good. There's not exactly a lot of things in our favor. It's going to be extremely hard to damn near impossible to get a winning season out of the Giants this year, but 100% something that is possible is to fall within that range of 4 to 8 wins. Like I said before, I had them at 7 and 9, and part of me still thinks that's very possible, but I'll be extremely happy if we get something like 6 or even 5 wins, as much as a lot of other fans would not be. I'm just trying to keep it a bit realistic here. When you're going up against teams like the 49ers, Rams, Seahawks, the Steelers, Ravens, Browns, and of course, our own rivals in the Cowboys and Eagles, it's going to be really hard to get a good amount of wins out of that. Now, within the conference, though, within the NFC East, I do actually expect us to do better than we did before. Now, of course, I always say we get 2 wins against Washington. I'm still a firm believer in that, so we got 2 wins there. But I really do think we have a chance to split with either the Cowboys or Eagles, or maybe even split with them both. Somehow going 4 and 2 in the division. I think I said conference earlier, but that's very, very possible to happen because of the fact that, once again, going back to my first point, improvement on the field. Part of the reason the Giants offense doesn't completely get a pass from me is because when Shermer was in there and when Saquon was dominating, particularly against the Cowboys and Eagles, and it seemed like the Giants were going to win in the first half, Saquon was effectively taken out of the game coaching wise and not really used on the ground, in the second half as he should have been. I don't expect that to happen this year with Joe Judge and Jason Garrett. Well, mostly Jason Garrett at the helms of the offense, somebody that loves to run the football. I fully expect this because of that. Because of the damage Saquon single-handedly did last year with a worse offense in terms of personnel. We have a lot better personnel on the offense this time around in the receiving core and the offensive line, in my opinion. And Daniel Jones right now is better than Eli was in his final year of his career. That's only going to help Saquon. I fully believe him to run us to at least 1 win against these guys. And of course, I've spoken at length in several live streams about how I think the Eagles are going to collapse this year. If you guys want a little bit more on that, let me know. I'll probably make a separate video on that. But I do expect us to do pretty good in the division this year. 3 and 3, maybe even 4 and 2. Not out the question. And since I was speaking about Saquon, kind of a nice little segue here into my next point, I expect Saquon to be in the conversation for rushing leader, if not to be the NFL rushing leader this year. And this one is kind of going to be a short segment of the video, mostly because I've spent a good part of the last, 6-7 months just gushing over Saquon, how I expect him to even be an MVP candidate. I'll link that video there right now, how I think Saquon could win the MVP, but he's going to be in the rushing title just because of who his offensive coordinator is in Jason Garrett. Now, Saquon and Zeke are 2 different running backs. Zeke is much more of a power back. Saquon is much more of an elusive back, along with receiving back kind of mixed into that. But I do expect him to be kind of run into the ground this year for a couple of reasons. One, the first one being Jason Garrett. Anytime they had a running back back there, the running back group of Dallas, and then, of course, in the past 4 years, since Zeke became the bell cow, they've always amounted to at least 300 carries in a season. Saquon, in his 2 years in the league so far, has never even come close to 300 carries in a season. In fact, his career high was his rookie year, where he had 261. and then last year he only had somewhere around 215 or something like that. And of course, with 261 back in his rookie year with a bad offensive line, he had 1,300 rushing yards. Imagine if he had that, but with 300 carries, God knows where he would come up to. Maybe I'll do the math, in post editing or something and throw up a number. I'll probably think maybe 1,500 rushing yards or something like that. But with Saquon, I fully expect him to get around 300 rushing yards. 300 rushing attempts because of Garrett, and also because once again of the pandemic. I think for the first half of the season, football is going to be a lot more sloppy than usual because of the lack of preparation time. And so teams are going to be playing it safe, especially a team like the Giants, who are already going to be a run-first team anyway. And they're just going to run the ball a lot to try and avoid mishaps with the passing game. I think a lot of teams, especially the Giants, are going to run the ball a lot, and that is going to increase his carries as well. Then, of course, there's the offensive line situation. And while I still I am a little bit worried about it just because of preparation-wise and because we're going to be starting a lot of young guys. At least I think we're going to be starting a lot of young guys. It is still improved from last year. How the performance is, I'm not sure. Should Saquon stay healthy, he should really have no problem with it, because in 2018, that offensive line is still much worse than what we have right now. So he should still prosper in a way. Like, if there's one thing I will say, my expectation, or the thing I fully expect to happen, is that Saquon has a bomb season. I think that's given. He just has a talent that he can overcome certain things like this. But this offensive line is improved from last year. You have a better left tackle in the rookie Andrew Thomas. Your center position is still in swing right now. We're not sure, but the two really good guards, and one of the best in the league with Kevin Zeitler at right guard. And then the right tackle position, another one that's kind of in the swing right now. But between Cam Fleming and Nick Gates, and maybe even Matt Peart towards the end of the year, I think we could have, somewhat of a stable right tackle position in terms of performance. And Saquon should benefit from that. Another kind of single player expectation I have goes with Daniel Jones, and this is another segment of the video that's going to be kind of short, because along with Saquon, Daniel Jones is somebody else the past 6-7 months I've been gushing over, and I made several videos just dedicated to him. I'll try and link one of them here somewhere, where I even said that DJ is going to be, possibly one of the best quarterbacks in the league next year. Maybe I was capping, you let me know. But whatever the case is, I expect Daniel Jones to take a step forward this year. Like I said, I'm going to keep it short, but my points are fairly straightforward. The first one being that it's his second year in the league. He's already experienced what it is to be an NFL player and what level you're going to be. Players usually take a step forward with that experience in mind. They usually use it as motivation, and they use it to fix their deficiencies and even increase themselves as a better player. We've already seen it, DJ doing it, physically at least, where he knows he's going to need to get a little bit bigger to withstand the defenses of the NFL compared to college. He's already improved physically. We've seen him reaching out to old coaches and even new ones when Jason Garrett, in terms of trying to increase his game mentally and, putting his new physical muscles to use in terms of throwing trajectories and whatnot, like what he was talking about with David Cutcliffe. And of course, leadership wise, he's been building a great bond with his offensive teammates, with them practicing together, and even Saquon saying they're now more friends than they were before last year, where they were just sort of teammates hanging about each other. They're now actually friends. There's actually a bond there. But also, Daniel Jones is going to be in very good hands coaching-wise. Jason Garrett, somebody that's very underappreciated when it comes to quarterbacks, especially what he did with Tony Romo, an undrafted guy, made Romo as good as he was at several points in his career. Romo was a top 10 quarterback. Dak Prescott, 4th-round pick right now. Dak is looking for that bag, but some would argue he does deserve it, as he's a top 10 quarterback. At the very worst, type of situation, he's top 15. But Dak, somebody else that Jason Garrett definitely helped develop. And I think Daniel Jones, at least his starting point is better than both Romo and Dak. So who knows where his ending point can end up. And of course, Jerry Shaplinski, another very underrated quarterback guy, having worked with Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jacoby Brissett. And also last year with Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, Josh Rosen being on your resume isn't exactly something impressive, but he did do some good things with Fitzpatrick over there in Miami last year. And once again, I think Daniel Jones' starting point is better than any of the other quarterbacks' starting point he's worked with, except for Tom Brady, because he worked with Brady later on in his career. Then, of course, there's also the offensive line situation. Basically the same as I said with Saquon. It is improved from last year. That did play a good part in him and his fumbles. And I do expect his fumbles to decrease because of that, and because of the physical attributes, and because of just the work he's been putting in. He's obviously looking to fix his deficiencies and fix his mistakes. So I do expect Daniel Jones to improve in year 2. Now, in terms of setting my realistic expectations for him this year, I'm not going to say MVP level or anything like that. Mostly because we're going to be expected to run the ball a lot. I will be surprised if he does break 4,000 yards. In terms of a stat prediction type thing, go and look at my offensive stat prediction video. It's not out of the question, but it is going to be hard to get there with the type of offense we're going to be running. Another player in kind of the finals, single player prediction that I have for this vid is actually with Evan Engram. Somebody, when I made my list of expectations for the Giants in 2020, I did not really expect to make the list until I saw Evan Engram's press conference a couple days ago. And before I get further, my prediction for him is that he's going to be healthier this year than he was last year. Now, that being said, I'm not saying he's going to have a full healthy season. I strongly don't even know if that's possible, but I expect Evan Engram this year to play anywhere between 10 to 12 games, which is a lot for Evan Engram. I think the most he's ever played in his career was his rookie year, where he played around 10 to 12 games actually. The full number isn't in my head, but the last time he was that healthy was his rookie year, and his health has just decreased every season since. Now, the reason I do think this for Evan Engram is because this past offseason, while it's been messed up for everybody else, I think the person who benefited the most was Engram, because he was forced to be in rehab longer than usual. He's essentially been in rehab since week 8 of this year? Of the past season, and he's been working in a very aggressive rehab situation. What is the word? Program that's the word I was looking for. He's been working in that for longer than usual, because if the offseason went as normal, he would have been back in football mode around June, May, June the latest, and he would have basically been cut 2 months of extra rehab that he got this year. Because OTAs didn't take place, training camp, mandatory minicamp and whatnot, Evan Engram has essentially been stuck focusing on getting his body better and his body physically healthier for around the extra 2 months compared to usual, and I do think he's going to benefit from that. Hell, maybe this is what he's needed. Maybe he never fully gave enough time to himself to recover, and that's why in year 2 and 3, his injuries got worse and worse, and they got earlier and earlier because he wasn't giving himself enough time to actually recuperate properly. And then even now, he still has extra time, because in terms of physical practice and whatnot, that doesn't start until August 17th, and even then, it's just going to be 2 weeks of it. I think his body is going to be healthier than ever before, than since his rookie year, and we'll see how it plays out. But I do expect him to be healthier than he was last year. 10 to 12 games, not out of the question. Has a lot to do with the rehab though. And now finally on to my last expectation for the Giants in 2020, kind of just on the defense as a whole. If you've noticed so far, the defense, I haven't really touched upon it since the first one in terms of improvement on the field overall. It's because the defense is a lot harder to predict than the offense, and I've said this for a couple months now, simply because the offense, it has a lot more of its pieces intact, and it's carrying over quite a few familiar phrases from the previous year compared to the defense. The defense, we still don't know exactly what the starting pieces are going to be. Is Marcus Golden actually going to start? If he does, who's starting beside him? Is it going to be Kyler Fackrell, or is it going to be one of the younger guys in Carter and Zimenez? On the defensive line aspect side of things, are we having the same 3 guys that we had last year in Lawrence, Tomlinson, and Leonard Williams? Or is it going to be much more of a rotation because of the scheme that Patrick Graham runs, which involves a rotation? And speaking on the defense as a whole, it's a good thing. He said when asked if it's going to be 4-3, 3-4, 4-6-6 or whatever, he's like, yes. Just that alone, we're not even sure if there is going to be a set, starters, if there's going to be set group of starters, because we're going to be running several different schemes for this big overall scheme, and that makes me confused just saying it. But it kind of plays into why it's hard to predict these things for the defense. Middle linebacker, who's starting beside Blake Martinez, and of course the biggest elephant in the room, defensive back, cornerback. Who in the world is the second outside corner? We don't know, and of course there's still the slot corner battle going on. There's just a lot of things on the defensive side of the football that, quite frankly, kind of late in the offseason have not been decided yet, and I have faith that they will be resolved by the time the season runs around. But right now, there's not much to say about it. So my one prediction for the Giants defense this year is that it is also going to improve from what it was last year. I quite literally just don't know by how much or whatever. I don't know if it's going to improve in the sense that we're going to be getting more picks, in the sense that we're going to be stopping guys on third down more like we should have been last year, in the sense that we're going to be getting more sacks, in the sense that we're going to be holding teams down to less points. I do know we're going to improve in terms of knowing the scheme, because once again, that was my first expectation, but I have no idea or inclination of how else we're going to improve, just because of kind of a wild card of how the defense is right now. I know that we have better personnel. In my opinion, the outside linebacker room is improved from last year, albeit there's only one other addition to where it was last year. I know the defensive line is basically the same as it was last year, but because we have a great coach in Coach Chaos, you know, from Penn State, who's known for being a great defensive line coach at the college level, maybe we'll improve, you know, with the guys we already have just because of who he is. I know that middle linebacker wise, we improved from what we were last year. Blake Martinez is better than Alec Ogletree and certainly has a lot more potential than Ogletree had to be a great middle linebacker in this offense. I mean, in this defense. I almost said offense. I know that our safety duo is 100% better than it was last year. Still not quite figured out how they're going to be used, but Xavier McKinney and Jabril Peppers is way better than Antoine Bethea and Jabril Peppers. And as for the defensive back room, it's honestly kind of the same right now, even though we lost people. It's kind of on the same level as it was last year. James Bradbury right now is better than Janoris Jenkins was last year. Second cornerback, don't know who it is there, but for the overall performance that we got from DeAndre Baker last year, it isn't exactly much worse. Slot corner, I think, is going to be an improvement because it's going to be a battle between Darnay Holmes and Julian Love, and like that's about it. Maybe the defense overall just improves and we shock some people and we're in the late teens, early 20s of defenses, you know, in terms of ranking amongst the league. Maybe it's the same as it was last year, but with the first expectation coming through, they actually know what they're supposed to do. We don't have guys falling asleep. We don't have them looking completely clueless on the field. I just don't know yet. But I do believe the defense is going to improve in some way because we have better personnel and better coaches. Not necessarily a better defensive coordinator, because we have to see, obviously, how Patrick Graham performs. But I think we have a way better supporting staff this year than we did last year, with guys like Brett Bielema, Coach Spence, Kevin Shurer, and other names that goes down the list. That is just really an impressive assortment of characters here to have as assistant coaches and, you know, the sub coaches and whatnot. But that is my expectations for the 2020 New York Giants. Let me know what you all think. If you're a member, you're seeing this video early, probably a day or two. It's my first official video that I made early to members. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you weren't a member, like I just said before, you're probably seeing it a day or two late. To have that perk and many others available to you, do click the join button below. There's 3 different tiers. You'll see the perks once you click on it. Consider it, and merch is available. That's it for now. I'm out. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I'll catch y'all in the next one.